So recently the Republicans passed tax cuts. They did it actually in the middle of the night, almost at 2 in the morning on Friday. Actually, that would be on Saturday because that's how late it ran. And they barely passed it, 51 to 49. They got every Republican except Bob Corker to vote for it. Why? Because they serve their donors, and there was the #1 thing on the donors' wish list, and they said it over and over again in the media. They said, we're going to cut off the funding to the Republicans if they don't get us what we want, which is this multi-trillion-dollar tax cut. 80% of the tax cut goes to the top 1%, and the top 1% are the donors who control people like Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley is their servant and always has been. So he's a senator from Iowa. He doesn't represent Iowa, as I'll show you in a second. He represents his donors. So when the Des Moines Register was talking to him about one particular part of the tax cut plan, which is cutting estate taxes, well, he got quite animated about that. Now, if you don't know, the estate tax is for incredibly rich people who leave behind their estate. Now, you and I might not leave an estate, but they do, and bless their hearts, nothing wrong with leaving an estate, but also nothing wrong with taxing that as it goes to the next generation. And right now, you can exempt $5.5 million per spouse. So if you're leaving money to your kids, you can leave up to $11 million and it won't be taxed at all. Now, even though the kids never got taxed on it, right? But they'll get, if you made $11 million because you worked your ass off, it'll get taxed. If Paris Hilton gets $11 million gifted to her from her parents, it will not be taxed. I think that's fundamentally unfair. But Chuck Grassley is not happy with that. He says that's not enough. The Senate version says that they're going to move the cap up to $22 million. You can leave $22 million to your kids who didn't work a day in their lives to get that money. You work your ass off to get the money, they're going to tax you. Paris Hilton doesn't get taxed for $22 million. Chuck Grassley thinks that's not even enough. He had co-authored a bill before to completely get rid of the estate tax. So that if Paris Hilton is she can get billions of dollars and never pay any taxes on it. Not Conrad Hilton, who built the empire. We're talking about Paris Hilton, who was an heir and didn't do anything to get that money. But you work, you get taxed. She doesn't work, she doesn't get taxed. That's what Chuck Grassley thinks is fair. But it wasn't good enough. He had to rub it in a little bit more. So he said this: I think not having the estate tax recognizes that people are investing as opposed to those that are just spending every darn penny they have, whether it's on booze or women or movies. Oh, that's what Chuck Grassley thinks of you. So if you're not a multimillionaire, he thinks, yeah, you're a schmuck. You're a bum. You spent all your money on booze. That's why you didn't get rich. If you got rich, well, then you didn't spend it on booze, because I know the rich never drink alcohol and they never go to the movies because all they do is work really, really hard. By the way, for some of the rich, that's absolutely true. A lot of them did work really hard, and some of them just inherited it. Even the Koch brothers joked about it. They said, we did everything right. We worked hard, pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps, and then got rich the good old-fashioned way. Our dad died and left us $400 million. That's a joke that the Koch brothers have told. And Trump got $200 million inheritance. So, oh, no. Everyone who's rich is working super hard. But more importantly, anyone who didn't get up to $22 million in their estate is just a bum who drinks their money away. That's what he thinks of you guys. Now, of course, he gets in trouble for that because it turns out that his state of Iowa does not have very many multimillionaires that are going to benefit from the estate tax. 99.998% of Iowans are apparently alcoholics who like to date and go to the movies, and he just insulted all of them, right? Well, then he says, no, my point regarding the estate tax, after he gets in trouble, by the way, he says this. My point regarding the estate tax, which has been taken out of context, is that the government shouldn't seize the fruits of someone's lifetime of labor after they die. The question is one of basic fairness and working to create a tax code that doesn't penalize frugality, savings, and investment. Basic fairness. First of all, he makes it sound like the tax is 100%. It's not, it's 40%. He makes it sound like Paris Hilton works so hard, the fruits of her labor. Oh, grandpapa, have you done working? Because I'm partying. I've been partying for decades now. Oh, where's Grandpapa's money? Good. Chuck Grassley, did you do as I told you and as my parents told you? Give me all the money for free. I don't want to pay any taxes. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's Chuck Grassley for you. So she didn't spend any fruits of her labor. Look, the Conrad Hiltons of the world, he built the Hilton Empire with the Hilton hotels. He paid taxes once. He paid taxes once. He built up a huge empire with a lot of money and he spent it, bless his heart. He saved a lot, he spent a lot. Is this his right to do that? We all aspire to the American dream. We all want to be rich. We all want to make that kind of money. Okay, God bless. Then he died. He is not double taxed, he's dead. There's no second taxation on Conrad. He would like to give his money to his kids and eventually his grandkids, etc., all the way down to Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton never worked a day in her life. You want to talk about basic fairness? You guys work your ass off and you get taxed. Paris Hilton, no tax. And Chuck Grassley says, that's not fair. Poor Paris Hilton, poor donors of mine. Basic fairness. What a joke. So as I explained to you here, I'll read it from HuffPost. The Senate tax reform measure, which would double the exemption for estates to $11 million for an individual and $22 million for a couple, heirs would inherit the estates tax-free up to that number. But again, if Grassley had it his way, there would be no limit. You could give billions of dollars to Paris Hilton and she would never pay a dime of taxes. Okay, now let's look at the Des Moines Register because they did great work on this. They thought, hey, Chuck Grassley, he's a senator from Iowa. Maybe there's just all these billionaires in Iowa and we didn't know it. And it turns out, man, he's really representing his voters. Maybe Iowa's 51% billionaire. Could be, let's find out. No, by the way, it can't be. Anyway, the number of Iowans paying the estate tax actually numbers in the dozens. Each year, out of roughly 1.4 million who file federal tax returns each year, IRS data from the last 5 years shows the number of Iowa taxpayers owing estate taxes ranged from 32 in 2012 to 61 in 2015. And that the vast majority of those probably were not farmers or small business owners, because they say that all the time. They say, oh, these are the farmers in Iowa. Which farmer's got $22 million sitting around? Which small farmer has $22 million in their estate? They say that not because they're representing the farmers or the small business owners. They say that as a cover. They're using you as a shield to do their donors' bidding. 32 people. Here, let's break down the math. The Des Moines Register noted that the number of Iowans owing estate taxes was just 32, as in one of the years, as we explained, of the 1.4 million taxpayers in 2012, or 0.002% of the total. You think these guys represent the voters? Oh, as you all know, and in fact 93% of you say this in a poll, they represent their donors. Chuck Grassley doesn't give a damn about the voters in Iowa. He doesn't care about small businesses and farms in Iowa. He cares about those 32 to 61 folks who finance most of his campaign. Private financing of election leads to politicians who work for private interests. Here's the capper. Now, this is Representative David Young, and he also wants to get rid of the estate tax. He said, quote, "It is a myth that repealing the estate tax is a massive giveaway to the wealthiest Americans." But wait a minute, it only applies to the wealthiest of Americans. Are there any middle class people who are making $22 million or leaving $22 million to their heirs? Are there any poor people leaving $22 million? By definition, there aren't. But they are so used to lying that when it comes to this issue, they're like, let's just pretend that the estate tax, which affects multi-millionaires, is not just about rich people. No. They are brazen. If you don't get the money out of politics, they will always represent their donors. This is the swamp. And by the way, of course, Donald Trump loves this, also wants to get rid of the estate tax, also loves the swamp, also wants to help his own self-interest. That's the Republicans, that's the Donald Trump, and yes, some Democrats, unfortunately. Democrats like Dianne Feinstein also voted to get rid of the estate tax. You're gonna be shocked to find out her family has billions of dollars and they don't want to pay taxes either. So pretending to be a Democrat, but when it comes to voting time, Feinstein votes for the Bush tax cuts and then says, oh, we should get rid of the estate tax. I hear that's really hurting the middle class. Yeah. Those were the old days when TV was your ally and you could lie and you could hide and we'd never find you. Well, to all those folks, and in this case, Chuck Grassley in particular, we found you. You don't represent the voters. You represent a couple of dozen guys who put money into your pocket and into your campaigns. That's who you are. You're a servant of the rich, and it's kind of sad and pathetic. You just watched a video by the Young Turks, the home of the revolution. If you'd like to get the full show, come join us and become a member. tytnetwork.com/join.